if you have a brain tumor or had a brain tumor, these are the books you should be reading. And
speaking of brain tumors,
welcome back to the Life of Books podcast. My name is Tony. With me, as always, is Andy, aka Metafictional Meathead, and not joining us today is Andy's brain tumor. Andy, how are you feeling?
Good afternoon, Tony. I'm feeling great. It occurred to me yesterday when we made plans to record this afternoon. Today is officially 1 month post-op.
Oh, wow. It's been that long already.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I had it. I went under the knife on May 20th.
Nice.
4 weeks ago today.
Well, we should probably back up a little bit because
sure, let's do it.
Occasionally there are people who are not regulars who
Right.
listen to this or watch this.
What a whirlwind of brand new listeners.
Yeah. So when Andy recently, in case you couldn't figure it out yet, has recently had surgery to remove a brain tumor. So when did you? We're going to talk about books today, I promise. But I know
More importantly, we're going to talk about my health and my brain. And
well, a lot of people have, I'm sure, messaged you. A lot of
Yeah.
people have messaged me. I get lots of comments now on everything I post, like, "How's Andy doing?" So this is the
you
official
get comments,
update.
people thinking you're the one that had the tumor.
I mean, I probably do. Who the hell knows? It's probably who knows? But anyway, so what were your first symptoms, and how long ago did they start?
So I started having some symptoms. I want to say it was like mid to late March.
Okay.
Probably. And it was like I'd wake up in the morning with anywhere from a mild headache to closing in on a migraine. Sometimes if it was more on the migraine side of that spectrum, I'd have a little bit of dizziness and or nausea. But at that time, those two were both very mild. It was just like the headache pain that was the worst symptom. And even then, like I'd wake up for work to get ready for work at like, around 6 o'clock, get to work around 7:30. By the time I was either out the door or at the very least, like sitting at my desk, the headache was gone. So it was very, minimal. And I was just like, oh, like I just.
So they were worse after laying down.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was also like, maybe I just like, sometimes you don't sleep very well. You wake up with a headache.
Sure.
Or
you had your neck cranked in a weird way. And,
or, the pollen levels are kicking up and
Sure.
your body just needs a little bit of extra time to wake up. Or there were times where same thing, I'd wake up a little bit earlier because I wanted to get my workout in before going to work. And I'd leave for the gym and still have some level of headache. And after warming up and just moving around a little bit, again, within half an hour, is feeling good as new.
Yeah.
And then I also started noticing it when I was going to jujitsu. And that's where I felt more of the dizziness and nausea.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the first thing you had mentioned to me. I had said, like, how's jujitsu going? And you're like, I haven't really been going because I don't feel good when I go.
Yeah. And it was, again, like, that was really the only time where the symptoms were, I don't want to say severe, but like consistently noticeable and felt out of the ordinary. And sometimes it was like I couldn't really tell if it was exertion based, if I was because I was pushing myself too hard and something was going on my body and rejecting it. Or there were times where it felt like it was movement based. Like if I rolled to the left, I'd feel fine. But if I rolled to my right, I'd feel dizzy. So I was like, maybe again, allergies, equilibrium's off. Things like
it
that.
could be something like vertigo where the crystals are out of whack.
Yeah. So I took some time off from jiu-jitsu, but I was still able to do all my weightlifting. And then I had, after it was maybe a month of that, we're just no lifting, but no jiu-jitsu. And lifting for the most part had gone really well. And then towards the end of, again, mid to late April, symptoms started getting worse. I'd wake up with the headache. They would either take longer to go away or wouldn't go away at all. The nausea was stronger.
Yeah.
There were a lot of mornings where it was very nauseous, had no appetite, and would get out of bed, putz around for about 5-10 minutes, and then throw up.
Oh, good. And then you were able to get it.
And then, 5-10 minutes and then throw up. 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 And then, 5-10 minutes And that happened. I probably let that happen a little bit longer than I should have before seeking serious help.
Yeah.
And again, part of that was you mentioned this in one of your videos. A young, healthy guy. I did not have a doctor.
Right.
So
you hadn't been to the doctor since you moved up to New Hampshire, right?
Right. Or at the very least, I hadn't established a PCP in New Hampshire.
Right.
So there was some period in there where like I was like, I need to see a doctor, but just dealing with the red tape of American healthcare.
Yeah.
Trying to get in with a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
I went to urgent care a couple times. They were useless and less than useless. Or
I mean, like we kind of told you in our group chat, like urgent care specifically, if it's like not like at actual emergency room in a hospital.
Yeah.
Their job is to like make sure you're not going to die in the next 10 minutes.
Right. Well, so the first time I went, I was really just like, I was going in, I was like, I'm having sporadic headaches. And they were like, you and everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very broad symptom.
Right. The second time I went, had been experiencing some ear pain as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked, I was trying my hardest to not like WebMD myself.
Sure.
But, I was looking into it and I was like, okay, I have inner ear pain. I'm nauseous. I'm dizzy and I have headaches.
Mm-hmm.
I have an ear infection.
Right.
Like that's,
I mean, definitely possible.
right.
Yeah.
And so going in the second time to urgent care, like having those kind of 4 ideas, I was like, they're going to at least be able to give me, they might not, diagnose anything, but they're going to be able to give me more help than they did last time.
Yeah.
Which they did, but it still wasn't much. And then I don't know, however long after that, I was able to get in with a physician, told him all of my symptoms. He said, he kind of checked my sinuses. He said they felt inflamed, whatever. Said it was probably a sinus infection, put me on a course of antibiotics. And it's obviously with the severity of what it ended up being, the brain tumor, it's very easy to kind of have your default reaction be upset with the physician for misdiagnosing it. But also, like I said, like I was a brand new patient.
Yeah.
For better or worse, all of the symptoms I was experiencing, which can and were caused by a brain tumor, can also be caused by a sinus infection.
Sure, yeah.
And either I didn't do a good job relaying the severity of the symptoms or he didn't listen to, and I get it. Brand new patient exhibiting symptoms of a common illness. You hear hooves, you think horses.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like the job of a doctor is to think very analytically about someone's case. Like, even if you're not a hypochondriac, I think sometimes when you're not feeling well, your kind of natural alarm bells start going off and you become like hyper aware of every little thing that's happening in your body. And so, like, statistically speaking, a sinus infection is probably much more likely than a brain tumor.
Right. And so that was on a Friday that I went and saw that physician, and then picked up the antibiotics, took those Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, really through the weekend and into like Monday evening, felt like I was getting better.
I mean, you could have had sinus inflammation. And
then I remember that Monday night feeling like a bit of a headache coming on. Not really, and a little bit nauseous, but again, just like nothing that was really concerning. And then Tuesday morning, I woke up at like 2 a.m. with a pounding headache. Couldn't get back to sleep.
Yep.
Tossed and turned till my alarm for work went off. Got out of bed, threw up almost immediately. And I was like, I'm going back to the doctor.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's just some, figure out what the hell's going on. So I went back to my physician and he said, sometimes antibiotics aren't linear. You get better, you kind of, regress a little bit. You get better, So, have you on a 10-day course? It's been 4 or 5 days. If your symptoms worsen in this way, go to the hospital, come back and see us, whatever. If not, just keep powering through with the antibiotics.
Yeah.
And then Wednesday morning, same thing. I went to work, tried to power through, go to work. I honestly don't remember if I made it the full day or if I left early. And then Thursday morning, it was the same thing. Woke up in the middle of the night. I think the headache was probably even worse that Thursday. Again, threw up. And I remembered, or so, with it, my mom had already had plans to come up on that Thursday. And I told her, the week prior that it was diagnosed as a sinus infection.
Mm-hmm.
And she was convinced, or I shouldn't say convinced, that sounds kind of negative, but she was thinking along the lines of like, he's a single late 20s dude, probably doesn't really take great care of his apartment, probably needs some just a deep clean, some environmental freshening up will help his symptoms. So she had, I think, already had that day off and had plans to come up and basically deep clean my apartment while I was at work.
Yeah.
And I texted her from bed. I was like, last 3 mornings, I have felt terrible. I think the doctor was wrong. When you get here, take me to the ER.
Yeah.
And just like basically laid in bed until she got there. And, we were both kind of thinking like, okay, maybe like you said, like it's possible that I did at one point have a sinus infection, and like somewhere through that, my sinuses got impacted or something like, it was some after effect of the sinus infection that had maybe gone away, but there was still some lasting effects. And so she took me to the ER. I did all the testing. They did lab work. They, all the normal vitals and stuff like that. And then they took me down for a CAT scan after I had been there for 5-6 hours, maybe.
Yeah.
Did the scan, came back to went back to my little curtained off bed in the ER. And they were like, we'll have the results in about an hour. The attending doctor came in about an hour later and said very, very casually, and I think this was just him not knowing any specifics, just not him trying to be like nonchalant and play it cool. But he was like, the scan showed something on your brain. Someone from the neurosurgery team will be here shortly to talk to you.
That's exciting.
And, maybe I didn't really react to it. Wasn't really think anything of it. Probably a bit of fatigue, a mix of fatigue from being in the ER for 6 hours.
Yeah.
And then also the doctor just not seeming very concerned.
Yeah.
And then 5 minutes later, someone who eventually turned out to be my neurosurgeon came into the room and he said, Andrew, yes. Andrew, my name is Dr. Gamble. You have a brain tumor.
Nice.
And I was just,
there's no other way for them to say it.
yeah. And honestly, I've talked about this with a few people, like throughout the whole course of obviously that one interaction. And then I've, met with him a few times prior to surgery. I've had a follow-up with him since. It's very straight shooter, you know, no beating around the bush. And I could very easily see how with a patient with a different personality, that kind of like no bullshit, here's what we're going to do, straight to the point attitude could have a very negative effect. For me, it was like, okay, cool. Like, he kind of, once he started talking about the surgery or what they were going to do to remedy the situation, to me, it was just like, oh, it's just another Tuesday for this guy.
Yeah.
Like
it's definitely confidence inspiring.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could tell like for the wrong person, it could come off as probably arrogant and maybe a little like flippant.
Yeah.
To me, it was like, this guy is confident. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
He knows what the situation is. He feels comfortable that he's the one that's going to fix it, yada, 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 whatever. I was like, I'm in good hands. What do I have to be nervous about? All I have to do is just show up.
Yeah.
And then they're going to put me under. And
Yeah. All you have to do is lay there.
Right. It was like, I'm not the one performing the surgery.
Yeah.
You guys are. Like, you're going to, pump me full of anesthesia. You're going to put some Frankenstein pins in my head.
Yeah.
And then turn me over on my face and then cut the back of my head open. Like,
Nice.
so.
I've been on both sides of it. In 2019, when I fractured two of my pacemaker leads, my home monitor was like, something ain't right, call your doctor. And when I went up to the hospital and I saw one of the EPs, he was like more of the like beat around the bush type of guy.
Yeah.
And he's like talking about it, and he's like, "Well, there's some options." And turns out, like, no, there's no options.
Right.
You guys have to do a surgery to take these out and put new ones in.
Right.
And so it kind of like gave you like a false sense of like, oh, this isn't a big deal. We can figure it out. And it's just like, oh no, I actually have to have this super dangerous surgery.
Right.
And then the actual surgeon who did the lead extraction, she was very blunt.
Yeah.
And she was like, so the surgery is really dangerous. She goes, the odds of there being a complication are somewhat low. She said 8 out of 1,000 will have internal bleeding. She's like, there's a cardiothoracic surgeon that'll be in the room with me in case he needs to do immediate open heart surgery on you to stitch you up. And I was like, oh, okay. She goes, but it is important to note that of those 8, 4 don't make it. And I was like, you mean like they die? And she's like, yep. And I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So yeah, that's again, one thing that I feel it feels weird saying fortunate given the situation I was in, but I never had that. Either it wasn't a possibility or they were keeping me blissfully ignorant.
Yeah.
But
it's probably buried in the fine print somewhere.
Right.
Something you signed. Yeah.
But, no one was like, hey, let's cut the bullshit and have a real conversation here. Like, you might not wake up from it. Like, there was never any sort of like life or death.
Yeah.
Obviously there was some concern both pre and post-op that the tumor could turn out to be cancerous.
Yeah.
Which thankfully it did not.
Yeah.
We're all clear there. But like I never, like I said, I wasn't nervous. It was weird.
I mean, there's not much to do.
Right.
I mean, it is what it is. So
right. Yeah.
When you're faced with that, kind of like there's no option, you just accept it. Like,
yeah. But it still feels kind of surreal to me that given how, severe the situation and the diagnosis was, like how smooth everything went.
Yeah.
I mean, I had one day pre-surgery that I was in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And I had one day, I think the afternoon, evening, immediately post-op, and then the next day, I was in a good bit of pain.
Yeah.
Totally different kinds of pain. Pre-surgery, it was like a headache, migraine type pain, very severe. And then post-op, it was musculoskeletal. Like, they just fucking cut my head open. And I was like, the post-op when I was in the ICU for a few days, that first day, especially my surgery was on a Tuesday. It was the Wednesday after where the pain was really bad.
Mm-hmm. And
my upper body was basically in like the fetal position. My shoulders were up to my ears. I was like curled up and I was so stiff and they were like, you need to relax. I was like, I'm fucking trying, you guys.
Yeah.
And then they pumped me full of Valium and
you're feeling real good.
And let me tell you guys, that stuff is great.
Yeah. The human body's not made to be cut open.
Yeah.
I came to that realization very quickly. Something kind of similar happened to me back in 2012 when I had the procedure to fix my heart arrhythmia, the one that caused me to need a pacemaker. They had told me that procedure was going to take about an hour and a half. And then for some reason I was on the table for like 5 hours.
Oof.
And I remember I had like sores on the back of my heels. And like my hips were killing me, like from where my hips were resting against the table.
Yeah.
Just from like being perfectly still for that period of time and not moving at all.
Yeah.
And then, you know, when I had my first pacemaker implant, the incision's like 2.5, 3 inches long at most. And like the pain was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it's just like the body's just not made to be cut open.
No.
And that's like a fairly like, you have a lot of flesh, like fat and muscle
Yeah.
tissue there. I can't even imagine like your skull. There's
Yeah,
there's not much.
I've got a pretty good scar now. I think it's about 3, maybe 4 inches, just right up the back of my neck.
I was surprised when you sent that photo, though. It looked a lot cleaner than I thought it was going to.
Yeah, I mean they did a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my surgery was about, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 hours.
I think it was like 4.5, maybe
4.5, 5 hours.
Your mom was keeping me updated.
I don't know. This is something they were joking about after surgery, and I don't know if they were told you at all. But so when they were in the waiting room, there was like a TV set up in there, and it was like when you go to the Verizon store, and you know you pick a number, and they have the
stats on the
yeah they kind of have the patient's name, and then you know going in surgery and whatever.
It's like tracking a flight.
Yeah, the various stages. And they said, you know, for the longest time, it's my name and then in surgery. And then like out of nowhere, my name was just off the board.
We lost him. We don't know where he went.
And obviously my parents got very nervous when they saw that. And I don't know how long it took them to actually flag someone down that could answer the question, but they were like, our son has been shown as in surgery for X amount of time, and now he's not even on the board. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And the guy was like, oh yeah, he's been out of surgery for an hour. He's in the ICU now.
Oh.
But
oopsie, forgot to update you.
Yeah. But, you know, and they showed it up, and I'm coming down from the anesthesia and just yapping away.
Yeah.
But,
so you had some motor deficits immediately after, right? So you were having some trouble with balance and stuff like that. How's all that now?
All of that is fine. That was mostly, I mean, the tumor was on my cerebellum, which, you know, does coordination and motor skills and things like that.
Yep.
And obviously the tumor and the, I guess indirect or direct effects of it were making me very dizzy.
Yeah.
But once they took it off, you know, there was a little bit of an after effect where my balance was still a little bit shaky. But a lot of it was just like, you know, just the natural, like post-surgery, you know, I had been under anesthesia for 5 hours.
Right.
And then
you've been laying in a hospital bed for a week.
Laying in a hospital bed for 4 days.
Yeah.
And then laying in a hospital bed for another 6 days, you know?
Yeah.
So just kind of had to like shake the cobwebs out. And then did a few walks and stuff like that around the halls of the hospital with the nursing staff. And then once I got back home to my parents, like I had maybe a week or so where I was, for a couple 2-3 days, I was using a walker.
Mm-hmm.
And that was more for like, I wouldn't say balance, but like kind of like guidance.
Yeah.
It's kind of something to like, you know, visual aid of where to like aim my feet while I was walking.
Yep.
And so I could feel a little bit more comfortable like looking upright.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I got better with that, I switched to a cane. Started feeling more and more comfortable without that, and then was really only using that as an extra aid if I was going up or down stairs.
Yeah.
And then stopped using that entirely. You know, felt good. Just like I grab the handrail like normal and walk up and down the stairs. And then, you know, since then it's been good. As far as accomplishing normal everyday tasks, you know, still have to see how I'll do, you know, going back to the gym, lifting weights and stuff like that, and then getting back into jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Both of those things kind of got clearance to go back under my own discretion. So, you know, didn't have to do PT or like rehab to get cleared.
Yeah.
Just have to kind of be diligent and ease my way back in and not be an idiot.
Probably go up pretty slow with jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
You don't want some fucking idiot wipeout like cranking on your neck or something.
Well, definitely don't want that. Fortunately for me, one of the things the doctor told me was that, coming out of surgery, obviously with a combat sport like jiu-jitsu, there's always a risk of a freak accident.
Yeah.
Really injuring you to a permanent extent, I guess.
Yeah.
Whether you've had brain surgery or not. Fortunately for me, with the diagnosis I had and the type of surgery I had, that risk has not increased for me.
Yeah.
So I'm still, there's always a risk of freak injury.
Yeah.
But if I run into that situation where I'm paired up with a brand new overzealous white belt who cranks on my neck, I'm not going to have to go back to the hospital for surgery.
Right.
And have them redo everything they've already done.
Yeah.
I'll just feel it more than the next day than I normally would.
Yeah.
So
you have a metal plate in your head now, right?
yeah, titanium.
Sick.
About, I think it's like, I don't know, maybe an inch by an inch. Not very big.
Yeah.
So
Just holding your skull together.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, you got to do some reading during your recovery. So what is your weekly reading update, Andy?
Okay. I covered a lot of books. So I made a list so I wouldn't forget them. I actually did very little reading in the hospital.
Sure.
I didn't get any reading done until like the day before they discharged me. Mostly because up until then, like I was on a pretty steady cocktail of pain meds and muscle relaxers and being woken up at least every 4 hours.
Yeah.
Which was miserable. Because they did, I mean, I'm sure you know, because you spent some time in hospital. They get you every 3 or 4 hours to check your vitals.
Yep.
I don't know if they did this for you because you had if it was like this for you because you had a cardiac thing, having a neurological thing on top of having your vitals checked every 4 hours, every 2 hours, they check your neurological symptoms.
Oh, sweet.
So, squeeze my fingers, push my hands, pull, what foot am I touching?
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Just basic neuro tests. Yeah.
Asking the date, do you know where you are? Things like that. This is before I get into the books. This is a funny story. So I remember asking, this was post-surgery, I think. Yeah. This is post-surgery. I was asking one of the night shift nurses. It was like 10, 12 o'clock, whatever. She came in for one of her checks and she's asking me, what's your name? What's your birthday? Where are you right now? What's the date? Yada, yada. And just kind of joking around. I was like, how bad do I have to screw up these questions before you're like, we got to get a doctor in here?
Yeah.
And she was like, well, it depends. Some of the questions are, a baseline. We kind of track a trend versus how you answer on the spot. She was like, if, it's May 21st and I ask you what day it is and you say May 20th, you're close enough. You have a rough idea.
Yeah.
And then if I come in tomorrow and ask you what day it is and you say May 21st, you're still wrong, but you're tracking the passage of time correctly. So,
Right.
We can correct you, but we don't have to worry.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. She was like, it's hard to answer because it depends on what you do. And so I don't remember if it was like I finally got like some really good sleep or if I had it was just a mix of the medicine they got me on, but I was just loopy as could be all night long. And she came in about 4 or 6 o'clock to wake me up and do that hour's testing. And I was like, it was the same nurse that I had asked the night before. They hadn't done the day shift change yet. And I was like, okay, I don't want this to sound like I'm asking where I am right now, but I had the craziest dream last night and I am out of it. And she was like, tell me about your dream. And I was like, I had a dream that I was a descendant of Amerigo Vespucci and that I was a ship captain on a boat out of Maryland in the late 1700s.
Yeah.
And I needed medical attention because my legs got blown off in some boating accident.
Nice.
And she looks at me, she kind of took a breath and she looked at me and she goes, that is how you answered all of my questions when I did my neurological check at 2:00. Like I was half asleep and she was like, again, they came in every neurological, they were like, do you know where you are? And I'm like half asleep, valiumed out of my mind. And I was like, Maryland. She was like, do you know what year it is? 1780.
Nice. Wow. Well, she's probably like, this guy's just high.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fortunately, when I was in, we did not do neuro. But what was extremely annoying was that before I had the pacemaker, the monitors that they have you hooked to are set to ring alarm bells when your heart rate drops a certain amount.
Okay.
And I think it defaults to probably like 50 or 60.
Yeah.
But I was in there for bradycardia.
Right.
And so my heart rate was like 35. So the thing's just going off constantly. So the woman came in, she's like, I'm going to set this to 30. I think that's the lowest I can put it. And then still, like, when I would fall asleep, my heart rate would drop into the 20s.
Yeah.
And so the freaking thing was ringing all night, every night. It was so annoying.
I had...
She's like, I can't turn it off. I'm sorry.
I remember when I was in the ICU, I was in the ICU for 2 or 3 days, 2 days, 2.5 days post-op. They had me hooked up to a blood pressure cuff that would just
automatically
every hour take a reading.
Yep.
And if it was set to something to like trigger alarm bells if my blood pressure hit a certain point, I never hit that point.
Yeah.
My blood pressure was elevated because I was in the hospital with a brain tumor.
Yeah.
So it was all pretty natural.
It's normal. Yeah.
But because just like my neck getting stiff and sore and whatever, because I had just had surgery, there were some occasions where instead of like leaning back in the hospital bed, even with it inclined, I'd want to just kind of like put my hands behind my head and like just kind of like tilt my head forward and just kind of change my position a little bit.
Yeah.
And the act of doing that, I don't know if it like turned the blood pressure monitor off or like what it did, but it knocked it out of position enough to like set off the...
Yeah. That's what sucks. You have somebody, you probably have like an O2 sensor in your finger. You have the cuff. Did you have an IV in you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're just like strapped to so much crap.
The worst, pre-surgery, in the ICU immediately after surgery, and then in the regular hospital room that they moved me to after the ICU, they had, there were a bunch of different things they were doing because they were like, you're just immobile in bed. Like we have to monitor, make sure you don't get blood clots.
Yeah.
And they had these like compression cuffs that they put around my calves.
Yeah.
And with every single nurse that I had in each different stage of my stay at the hospital, I was like, I will keep these on during the day, but like, I'm going to barter anything and everything. Like you can have my social, you can have all of my money. You can have everything. For the love of God, take these off at night.
Yeah.
I was like, this is just the most uncomfortable thing. Even if it's not like running, like just this thing being on my leg and it's, strapped to the bed. And one of the nurses was, she's like, well, okay, but if you need to use the bathroom in the middle of the night, you have to promise that you're going to call. I was like, okay, fine. If that's the deal, great. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Like I have no problem with you holding my elbow while I walk to the bathroom if it means I can take these things off.
Oh my God.
So anyway, let's get to the star of the show, books.
30 minutes in, 40 minutes in.
40 minutes in. The first book I read post-brain surgery was Slaughterhouse-Five by
Fantastic.
Kurt Vonnegut. Great book.
If you don't know who
Yeah.
wrote Slaughterhouse-Five,
Yeah, right.
You shouldn't listen to this show.
You should get a CT scan.
Just, yeah.
Phenomenal book. Second time I had read it.
Yep.
The first time I read it, it was probably almost a decade ago.
Yep.
So obviously a very powerful and moving book. Even more so when you've gone through a medical emergency.
Yeah.
Or a serious medical crisis.
Traumatic life experience.
Yeah. And then also just having lived more general life experience and seen more, obviously it's a book about World War II, but having seen a lot of military conflicts and things like that and all of the other things that are going on in the world. Like
plenty to choose from these days.
Yeah. It's a very profound and emotionally affecting book. So awesome.
Cool.
And then I'm going to just kind of go out of order here. Or I guess by size of the books. Let me read the ones I didn't bring with me. I reread Crying of Lot 49.
Oh, wow.
By Pynchon. I got a tattoo of the muted horn from Lot 49. I read Cairo and Breakfast at Midnight by Louis Armand. I started to read and then DNF'd If on a Winter's Night a Traveler by Italo Calvino. Couldn't really get into it. I was sort of enjoying it, and then it kind of fell off. I think part of it might have been one of the things I dealt with post-surgery, post getting out of the hospital. I just could not sleep for the life of me. A mix of, just general inflammation, recovering from the surgery, having my sleep routine thrown off by my stay. I just could not sleep.
Yeah.
I was basically sleep deprived.
Sick.
So, and not that it's a super hard, difficult, dense book, but with how it's structured and formatted, so I don't know, maybe I'll give it a try another time. Maybe I won't. Okay. So we got those out of the way. I read The Summer Layoff by Matt Bucher. Matt is one of the co-hosts of the Concavity Show, which originally started covering pretty much everything Infinite Jest related.
Sure.
Had different authors and readers and critics and whoever on to talk about Infinite Jest, and then talk about David Foster Wallace. And now I don't think they're super active anymore, but just talking to authors about their works and things like that.
Cool.
Super cool podcast. Super great guys. I think got some great interviews. But this was a really awesome book. It was very easy to read, very accessible. It is about a guy who worked kind of in like a tech, cushy, white collarish job, and gets laid off at the start of the summer and gets a very generous severance package. So basically just spends his summer farting around Austin, Texas.
Nice.
Kind of keeping a diary and just like ruminating on life. And so the narrative of this novel is like the diary that he's keeping. So it kind of, it coincided well. Like I was in a period of forced stasis where I just couldn't really do anything. I was out of work.
Yeah.
Sitting on my parents' couch, just kind of plugging along and reading this. So it fit really well. It was a really awesome book. It is out now. Go buy it from your local bookstore.
Cool.
Then I read Last Words on Earth by Javier Serenas, translated by Katie Whitmore.
Yep.
Is that what it says?
Yep.
Okay. That is from our friends at Open Letter. It is a fictional biography of Roberto Bolaño.
Oh, wow. Your boy.
Yeah. And it was awesome.
Cool.
It was awesome. I think I read it in like a day, maybe like 1.5-ish sittings. I stopped to like eat dinner.
Sweet.
And then got back to it. Then I read The Lost Scrapbook by Evan Dara. Awesome book as well. I don't want to talk too much about it because narratively you don't really find out what's really going on, the kind of overarching narrative, until the last like 100 pages.
Yeah.
And part of that, it coming together is sort of the point. So I don't want to talk too much about it, but it's told in like, vignettes and scattered unattributed dialogue. And
he's kind of Pynchon-esque, right? Dara, like nobody knows anything about him.
Yeah. Nobody knows. It might even be a woman.
Could be a woman.
Yeah.
Right.
Evan Dara is basically confirmed that's a pseudonym. That's like the only thing
Sure.
anybody really knows is that is not the author's real name.
Yeah.
But yeah, very much writes in the style of like a Pynchon, a Gaddis, Wallace.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure if this is true, but what I had heard somewhere, I couldn't even tell you where, is that the manuscript for this book, the Lost Scrapbook, just like showed up on William Volman's door one day.
Oh.
Somehow this Dara person found out where to mail Volman stuff, and
They were just like, what do you think of this?
yeah, and was like, this is awesome, and then it got published, and I think Dara, the original ones, might have been I don't know.
Huh.
It's a great book, period.
Yeah.
The lore behind it and Dara just adds to it.
Yeah, cool.
And then last but not least,
Certainly not least.
The Whale, Moby Dick.
That's a big ass copy of
Yeah,
Moby
dude.
Dick.
I did not realize
Jesus
it was
Christ.
that big when I ordered it. But yeah, The Whale. I finally knocked it off. One more book down to making me the ultimate literary lit bro.
Hell yeah.
All of the meme books. So, and then haven't finished them yet. Have been reading The Chandelier by my lady, Clarice Lispector.
Yep.
It's good. It's not great.
Okay.
It's her, I think it's the second novel she published. Kind of one of the more, I don't know if obscure is not the right word, but lesser known, less talked about, less lauded.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a bad book by any means. It's just doesn't have the same radiance that her more well-known books have. And then this morning I started Gesell Dome, not sure, by Guillermo Saccomanno. That is also from our friends at Open Letter.
Cool.
I've only read about 40-ish pages.
Yeah.
But it's awesome.
Nice.
It's some Argentine noir.
Oh, sweet.
It's really good. Not very difficult. It's just kind of a fun-ish kind of story with that, Argentine, Latin American flair.
Cool.
So that's been really good. Yeah, that's everything I got.
Sweet. I don't know how many books I've read since the last time you were here, but currently I'm reading Moby Dick as well.
Yeah.
You talked me into
Yep.
rereading that. So I kind of thought back on it. I read it in high school. I couldn't remember exactly when I read it the first time, but I remember I did read it in high school. And the way I kind of remembered that was that I remember going on a trip with one of my friends, a road trip to like Maryland or something. And we were arguing because he was not in my class. I was in AP English, and he couldn't believe that there was a character named Queequeg. He's like, that can't be a real name. I was like, I mean, it's in the book. I can show it to you.
I don't know how to prove to you that it is.
And then back in 2015, I tried to get a book club together with some people at the gym, and everyone's like, yeah, sounds cool. And I was like, cool, we're going to read Moby Dick. And then we went to we were going to have our first meeting, and we showed up, and I was the only person that had read anything. And so I think I only read maybe the first third or maybe a little bit more than that. And I'm getting I'm about halfway through now on this read. And I can tell okay, this is stuff I have not read since high school because I don't remember quite a few of these finer details. Where the first third of the book on the reread, I was like, yeah, I remember all this stuff from 2015. But
It's definitely something I will reread in the future.
There's so many references.
There's so many references.
To
it's very
various things. Yeah.
And I'm going to assume that considering you're reading it, I recently read it. I loved it. I know you're having a ball with it. It's probably going to be something that we'll do an episode on.
Yeah.
So I don't want to dive too much into it right now. It's so, there's so much complexity and density to it. And then on top of all of that, it's a great narrative. It's just a good book.
It's a cool story. Yeah.
It's a cool story. And not to say that I didn't read it closely or like rush through it, but I didn't really have anything else to do.
Yeah.
But read, or like take the dog for a walk, and she's not going for a walk all day long. You know, she needs rest too.
Yeah.
So just having nothing to do, like I kind of was just like, this book is awesome. Like all I want to do is read Moby Dick. So like, I definitely missed some things just because I mean, it's one of those books that like you're going to miss things on every read.
To be honest though, like I don't know that it really matters so much if like there's a lot of times where he'll be like such and such was like this and the words capitalized. You're like, okay, this is clearly referring to a person or a place. Right. And you go look it up and it's like, this is a castle in, I don't know, Scotland or whatever. And it's like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
You know, and you could like go read the Wikipedia page on that thing and understand why he chose that as like the thing to compare the other thing to, but it doesn't really necessarily affect the story that much.
Right.
So
yeah. So it's one of those ones that, you know, I'll save for the next time around. I'll do a little bit of a deeper analysis or a little bit of a closer reading, but
I mean, it's really not that difficult of a read.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's easy per se, but
it wasn't
it's not
easy,
like,
but like
it's not like Gravity's Rainbow or something.
Right.
And I'm also reading A Naked Singularity by Sergio de la Pava for the June book club, and I'm reading The Writing of America by Jeff Ward, which is a literary criticism anthology.
And you recently finished Matterhorn?
I did. I recently finished Matterhorn by Karl Marlantes, which was great. You should read it.
I should read it. I have a copy somewhere.
Super easy read.
Yeah.
I mean, it's over 600 pages, but you could probably read it over a weekend. It's a fast read.
Yeah. I remember, I think I got my copy when you and I went to the 5 colleges book sale. And you were, we laughed and you were like, oh, what did you get? And I like showed you and you were like a little bit mad at me that I found it before you did.
Yeah, because it had been on my list for a while.
It had been on your list forever. I had never heard of it. And I just like picked it up and I was like, this sounds good. It's $1. Like threw it in my bag. And you were like, I've wanted to read that book for years.
Yeah.
And then
it's good.
Yeah. And then you messaged me like a week later. You were like, so I bought a copy of Matterhorn.
Yeah, it's a super easy read and it's a very gripping story. It like sucks you in and you just kind of want to just blast through it. So
yeah.
Cool. Well, we went to the Graham to field some questions. Do you want to pull up yours first?
I got them up right now. I don't want to ignore them because it's nice to hear from people. Just not questions, but well wishes. Flipping pages 10, no question, but glad to hear you're back and I hope you're doing well. Migsy3, pretty much the same thing, no question. Glad Andy is home and recovering. Much love to you all. Friend of the program, Buddy, a.k.a. Thanatoid Reads. What did Andy name his tumor and which book caused it? And I clarified with Buddy. He meant which book caused the tumor. No idea. We've collectively, Buddy and I, have decided to blame it on Ducks Newburyport. But in all seriousness, it is possible that I have a rare genetic disorder that caused the tumor.
Oh, do they anticipate that it might come back?
Maybe.
Oh,
that is a possibility whether I have this genetic disorder or not.
Can they test for the disorder?
Yes.
Okay.
Whether I have this disorder or not is more of just going to influence how they monitor it.
Sure.
And, something that I should have in mind if I plan on having kids.
Okay. So did they Like, are you going to get tested to see if you have the disorder?
I am going to get tested.
Okay. What does that entail?
No idea.
It's probably like some type of DNA test, I would imagine.
So actually, and this is fortunate for me because there's not like other health complications associated with this genetic disorder.
Just brain tumors.
It's just the brain tumor that I've already had.
Cool.
He was like, when I saw my surgeon for my follow-up, he's like, I honestly don't even know what lab around here tests for this.
Sure, yeah.
So I have to do some research. So I have to get tested for it. It's not like an urgent thing in the sense that if I have it and we don't test for it soon enough, I'm going to end up back in the hospital. So
not to get too sidetracked here, but this reminds me of when I was going through all my heart stuff. I had the pacemaker put in and that brought my heart rate to normal.
Right.
But then like 6 months later, my heart function dropped. So the amount of blood my heart was pumping with each beat.
Yeah.
And the doctor I was going to, who ended up being kind of an idiot, he was like, "Oh, you might have this rare genetic thing." And I was like, "Cool." And he's like, "There's pretty much only one company that tests for it. The company is going to call you. And it's like a $10,000 test if your insurance won't cover it, and they probably won't cover it. So if your insurance doesn't cover it, just tell them that you're flat broke, and then the company won't charge you anything for the test." And I was like, "What kind of stupid shit is this?" And so that's exactly how it went down.
You lost me at they'll call you. No, they won't. No, they won't.
Well, they did. So they called me. They're like, "Oh yeah, your insurance didn't approve for this. So do you have the $10,000?" And I was like, "No." And they're like, "Okay, well, we won't charge you then." And I was like, I don't understand your business model. And I guess that's like all they did was like test for like a handful of rare genetic diseases. But anyway,
Jesus Christ.
I know.
So anyway,
American healthcare, number one.
To answer the other half of Buddy's question.
Yeah.
The tumor was named Jacob.
Oh.
And I named him such because the first time I saw my primary care physician and was misdiagnosed with a sinus infection, when I left the doctor's office, I got up out of the chair and was walking out the door, and he said, "Have a good one, Jacob."
Nice.
So just
real personal care there.
Yeah,
nice personal touch.
So there we go. Books by Pierre wants to know, did you get to keep the tumor? Unfortunately, I did not. They had to send it out to be tested to make sure I didn't have cancer.
Do we have any book-related questions?
Sure. Well, someone asked, was I worried about losing my Gravity's memories? No. Maybe a little bit, but
I mean, imagine if you got to reread Gravity's Rainbow for the first time.
Right? Was there anything special, particularly special about the edition of Moby Dick Andy just read? There was not anything particularly special about the edition I have, other than I really like the way it's cool aesthetically. And a lot of other people that I was doing the group read with had this particular edition. And I have a different copy. I have 2 copies of Moby Dick now. I forgot to grab the copy I already had when I was leaving New Hampshire to go back to the Cape to, convalesce with my parents.
Yep.
And I was impatient and wanted to get reading, so I ordered this copy because I liked it. All right, I'm just gonna go in order, so some of these might not be book related. Was the brain that was from Just Because. This question is also from Just Because. Was the brain tumor the final push Rick needed to finally send Andy the hat? I don't know, Rick. Are you gonna send me the hat? Just kidding. I did get a message from Rick while I was in the hospital, wishing me well, letting me know that the hat was almost ready for me.
Nice.
So I don't know if it's en route at this point. Who knows? But we're getting closer. Okay. I'll read this question just because we already sort of answered it. This is from Don Dory Official. What books did you read in the hospital and during your recovery? Go back and listen to the last 15 minutes of the episode. Thanks for the question. Jake_Becca asked, what's the most obscure book you have read, and because of its style or not widely published?
I would probably have to say Love and Terror by William Herrick.
Yeah.
It's out of print. It's hard to get. not a lot of people had read it and reviewed it on like Goodreads, which is kind of like my barometer for how popular a book is.
Yeah. I would say on level of publicity, probably same.
Yeah.
Love and Terror by William Herrick. If we're talking about stylistically, I mean, I didn't finish it and I regularly talk about it, but Ducks Newburyport is pretty obscure.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about something that's, better known, something like JR, I mean, 700 whatever pages of almost entirely unattributed dialogue. That's pretty obscure stylistically.
I mean, even Gravity's Rainbow is quite stylistically obscure, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. This is from Burning My Library. He's got 2 questions. The first one is specifically for me. What had you sitting down longer, the surgery or the dick?
Nice.
As you can imagine, being a bunch of literary lit bros, there was a lot of phallic humor going around in the group chat for the group read, which Burning My Library was part of. Depends on how you want me to answer that question. If we're talking like single sitting, the surgery was definitely longer than the amount I've read of Moby Dick in one sitting.
Yeah.
If we're talking collectively, I definitely spent more time with Moby Dick than in surgery.
Nice.
And then this question is for both of us. Who are some translators you would like to get on the pod?
All of them.
Yeah.
I mean, Katie Whittemore translates a lot for Open Letter.
Yep.
Who we both love. So she would
New
be
Hampshire
great.
native.
She's a New Hampshire native. I don't know if she's currently residing here or not.
I don't think she lives in New Hampshire. I don't think she lives in the States anymore.
Yeah. We recently had Katie Semmel on, who translated Rock, Paper, Scissors by Naya Marie Eit. He was great. Super cool guy. That's an episode worth listening to if you haven't yet.
Max Lawton.
Max Lawton actually was... Max was actually going to come on the podcast.
Yeah.
He DM'd me because he had heard that we wanted to get him on.
Yeah, we made some connections with him, and then
he goes, he's like, I would rather do it sooner than later. And I was like, okay, cool. Let me chat with Andy to figure out what dates might work. And then literally like the next week, everything started happening.
I don't even think it was I think it was like a day later.
Yeah.
I think you were messaging with him the week of.
And then he DM'd me and he's like, do you guys have any dates in mind? I was like, small problem.
Yeah.
Andy has a brain tumor. And he was like, what?
Yeah.
But he would be cool. I've read a few Deborah Smith translations. She translates Korean. She translates some Hong Kong. So that would be cool. I mean, I just think translating is so fascinating.
Yeah.
So.
I would, they might not be great guests for the pod just because you have not read as much of his work as I have, and stuff you have didn't really resonate with you as much as it did with me. But Chris Andrews and Natasha Wimmer, who have both translated a ton of Bolaño's work, they'd be cool to talk to.
Yeah.
Same with Adelaide Molzet, who has translated some of Krasna Horkai's work.
Oh, cool. Yep.
I don't know. Well, he probably speaks English considering he translated it from Hungarian to English, but George Surtse's, same thing. Another thing that I was thinking about today while I was looking through these questions, I don't know of any names, unfortunately, but something person that I think would be cool to talk to and kind of get the other side of that experience on, someone that has worked translating a really popular book from English to another language. If you think about it, like a book like Infinite Jest, especially with the kind of idiomatic and colloquial style
that's got to be a nightmare
that
to
Wallace writes with.
Yeah.
Hearing how someone took that and translated it into Russian or French or whatever, that would probably be a really cool conversation.
Definitely.
So that's what I got for that.
Yeah, I'm open to have anybody on.
We'll talk to almost anybody.
Yeah.
We're basically desperate.
Please come on our podcast.
Yeah. Remember though, we only host people or invite people on that send us free books.
Correct.
You have to bribe us first if you want to be on the show.
That's correct.
Outside of that, we'll talk to almost anybody. Jay Bergsy asks, best way to find books from smaller / indie publishers can be hard to find in stores. I'm going to assume, based on how the question is worded, you're looking for like where to get them from, not necessarily recommendations. Go straight to their website. Buy from the publisher. Support the publisher that way.
Yeah.
If depends if like your only option is a place like a Barnes and Noble. But if you've got an independent bookstore near you, ask them if they can special order it. I would argue that's probably better for the publisher, because if you special order a book from Open Letter in June and then you go back and do it in July and August, the bookstore is going to notice the trend, and they're going to start stocking books from Open Letter, and then someone else is going to see them on the shelf and buy them, and it's just going to be better for the publisher.
You just have to go. There's probably more bookstores around you than you might think. I've found that a lot of small bookstores, used bookstores, indie bookstores are not great at their digital marketing.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, like, even if you search bookstores near me, they might not come up on the first page of Google or be obvious. So I'm always kind of discovering new bookstores. When Mike from the book club and I got together in Boston the other day, we went to a bookstore I'd never been to before, which was the Brookline Booksmith in Brookline, Mass, right outside Boston. And they have a little used kind of section that they call the used book cellar. Cellar is in the basement. It's underneath. Really cool spot. And they had a ton of cool stuff.
Yeah.
They had Open Letter. They had Deep Vellum. They had some New Directions. They had a lot of like really like kind of more obscure like Penguin classics and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I mean, just order directly from.
Yeah. I would also say if your question is geared more towards like getting recommendations from books to buy from smaller publishers, unfortunately, you kind of have to some degree, you kind of have to pay attention to what people are posting on social media.
Yeah.
What I would also recommend, it depends on the smaller on the publisher, but just straight up DM them, and ask them, hey, I really are interested in, you guys seem like really cool. I like the work you're doing. I want to support you. What are some books from your catalog you would recommend? Yeah, and depending on the intern that's monitoring the direct messages, or if it's to bring up Open Letter again, DM Chad directly. Yeah. And
tell him what you like, and he'll make some recommendations.
Or they'll ask you some questions, what you like, whatever, and they'll make you some recommendations. The book, Gesell Dome, I'm reading right now, Chad personally recommended that to me.
Oh, cool.
And it's, like I said, it's been awesome.
Yep.
Curious about if Andy liked Moby Dick. Seems like not his kind of thing, but also exactly his kind of thing. It was my kind of thing. I loved it.
Cool. I mean, generally, you don't read much 19th century.
Yeah, I mean, based on the time period it was published, it's not really my thing, but like everything else about it, it's exactly my thing.
Cool.
Except for the fact that it's like, it's also the narrative is linear. It's digressive and tangential, but it's linear.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a start to finish. That was from Weaver.Troy. One putt. Finished The Crying of Lot 49 and didn't get it. What's an anti-novel you didn't get? I'm not really sure how to answer that. I looked up anti-novel just to make sure when I read the question. And it's basically something that eschews the conventions of a normal novel.
So a lot of what we read.
Yeah, it's a lot of what we read. Based on the very vague definition that I just gave, I would not really consider Crying of Lot 49 an anti-novel. I mean, there are plenty of books that I didn't get.
Recently, one that stands out to me is The Flanders Road by Claude Simon. I read that, and I mean, like, I got some of it, but a lot of it I was like, I don't know. Man.
Yeah,
I don't know what's happening.
I honestly, not to skirt around the question, but I cannot think of many like anti-novels that I have read recently.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess in a sense, Bolaño's Nazi Literature of the Americas is not really a novel in the sense of having like a true narrative. It's just a list of fictional biographies.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I didn't get it, but
Sure.
you know,
Yeah.
some of it kind of went over my head. Joey Football 55. I don't see LOB talk much about philosophy or, quote, academic books in general. Any particular reason why? Just curious to hear how you feel about non-literary works. Me personally, I'm really just in general, like most of my interest lies in reading fiction and literary works.
Yeah.
Not to say that I'm not interested in philosophical or academic books. I'm just more interested in literary ones. So I generally choose to read those and or the squirrels in my brain lead me to those quicker. You, on the other hand, I think are a little bit more interested, at least in philosophy.
Yeah. I mean, I used to read more of it than I do now.
Yeah.
I almost read none now.
Yeah.
I think
I've turned you into a fiction head. So
yeah, I mean, like good works of fiction tackle a lot of the same thing. They tackle philosophical questions in just a different way.
Right.
You don't necessarily need to just like read pure theorem.
Right. Right.
Like, you know, The Conspiracy Against the Human Race by Thomas Ligotti is a good one. The Trouble with Being Born by Emil Cioran is a fun book.
Yeah.
I read some Jiddu Krishnamurti back in the day, who was an Indian philosopher. Just a weird guy all around.
Yeah.
Ethics by Spinoza.
Yeah.
I've read some Nietzsche. I mean, I don't know. It's just like, to be honest, like you kind of get, I think I get a little burnt out on it after a while.
Yeah.
Thinking about thinking.
Right. Right.
Just, I don't know.
I mean, it's not something I'm not interested in.
Yeah.
I just haven't read anywhere near enough of either to discuss them without sounding like more of an idiot than I already do.
Yeah.
So, Lost Scrapbook asked, interested in Andy's thoughts about the Lost Scrapbook. I loved it.
Very meta.
Yeah. Our good buddy Jared Mello. Have you incorporated your brain surgery as a pickup line yet? It is referenced in my online dating profile. Nice. I have not directly used it as a pickup line.
Nice.
So yes and no, Jared. Working on it, buddy.
Nice.
Shiro Hiroshi asks, thoughts on Finnegan's Wake? Neither of us have read it.
Don't plan on reading it.
I would like to maybe read it at some point. Just, again, to be the ultimate pretentious lit snob.
I mean, after you read Joyce's letters to Nora, you really can't surpass that.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to read Ulysses before I ever even get a copy of The Wake.
Yeah.
I'm at least interested in it. We'll see how I feel about actually taking the time to read it after I've read Ulysses.
Yeah.
Simon the Saint Templar asks, what are some books that you think portray what's happening in the world today? Which is
what is happening in the world today?
Yeah, that's a loaded question.
You talking about fascism? You talking about nuclear war? Are you talking about what are you referencing exactly?
Well, not to. I hate doing this because I bring them up every single episode.
Oh, here we go.
And I've already mentioned both multiple times this episode.
Mm-hmm.
The two that immediately jumped out to me were Infinite Jest and Gravity's Rainbow. I think with the, we'll say the military conflict, to keep it general.
The military
the various military tensions going on in the world.
Yep.
Obviously things are heating up in the Middle East as we're recording this. And then just other, military industrial stuff going on in the world. Just so much of what Gravity's Rainbow is about becomes like more and more prescient as we move further away from when it was published. And then, like we talked about when we did our episode on Infinite Jest, Wallace just so accurately predicted like so much of what would come to be society in society. You know, kind of predicted doom scrolling.
Yep.
Predicted the filters, predicted streaming services,
predicted America annexing Canada.
yeah, and we're probably not that far off from subsidizing time.
Yeah.
And then the idea of, you know, fanaticism and picking what you're fanatical about.
Yeah.
Not to bring politics into it, but just like you get people, the MAGA crowd, like they're fanatical about Donald Trump. Just this idea of being wildly fanatical about someone or something.
Yeah.
And having some degree of choice in deciding to be latching yourself onto that idea.
Yeah.
Was a big theme of Infinite Jest. So there's that. Andreas Diaz 19 asks, what makes Argentinian literature stand out to you? To me, so I really sort of struggled when I read this question.
I mean, I don't know that Argentinian literature does stand out to me. Does it stand out to you?
A little bit.
Okay.
I haven't.
And that's not, I'm not,
Right.
I don't know.
Right. I was really struggling when I read this question to think of anyone other than Borges that I've actually read of, you know, Argentine
Yeah.
descent. I mean, the book I'm reading right now by Guillermo Saccomanno, he's an Argentine author.
Yeah.
But
You read Fever Dream though, didn't you? Samantha
yes.
Schweblin?
Okay. So she's Argentinian.
I think so. Yeah.
To me, what makes it stand out outside of compared to the rest of Latin American literature, not that Latin American literature has this like, you know, kind of hoity-toity, haughty, like bourgeoisie like attitude. There's something to me about Argentine literature that is like more connected to, you know, the gauchos and the workers of the pampas, and it's just a little bit more connected to the working class than and the nitty and the gritty of everyday life than the rest of Latin American literature. I mean, again, not to say that Mexican literature or whatever doesn't cover those topics, because it's a huge theme of that.
Yeah.
Of any Latin American literature. I think, at least to me, in the Argentine works that I've read, there's just that little extra bit of element to it where, you know, it is just a little bit more like adventurous.
Interesting.
So, and then the last question I've got, this is also from Andreas. Does literature make us healthy? Often feel like Schopenhauer that we have to be wary of overreading.
Schopenhauer can suck it.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I think literature's too broad. Like,
Well, so when I read this question, it brought me back to something we discussed when either in the episode, it probably would have been the episode we did discussing the Savage Detectives. I don't think we would have broached this topic as part of like our reading recap when you and I are both reading it. But the line from that book that I was like obsessed with, literature isn't innocent.
yeah.
And I think in general, literature can make us healthy. I think it is largely beneficial for everybody to read more. I think this doesn't apply to you or I or most of the people listening to us, or the people that are in our book club in the Discord and are actively talking about books. But there are probably people online in the online book community or just online in general, And then outside of any of those spaces, like in real life, where they're carrying books around performatively. And we've all seen the memes about the wannabe intellectual bros that have
Infinite
Jest and Moby Dick and Ulysses on their shelf, but have never even considered reading them.
Yeah.
So I think if you're doing something like that, like that's unhealthy. And then again, to really get a little bit global with it, you know, you and I sitting here discussing books is not a bad thing. It's good for us personally. It's good for us mentally and intellectually. It's good for the people, our audience, to listen to this discussion. But I think someone could probably argue, I wouldn't agree with it, but someone could make the argument that there is currently a genocide going on in the Middle East and Nazis are taking over America, and you and I could right now maybe be doing something more productive with our time to benefit other people than recording this podcast. Not that this podcast is harmful to anybody.
Right.
But like the world is burning around us and we're sitting here talking about books.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that when things are going awry, it is important to maintain some sort of like normalcy.
I agree.
And also, like, I think books are a net positive.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I agree with all of that. And like I said, I certainly don't think that like you and I recording while the world is burning is a bad thing.
Yeah.
But someone,
I mean, look, if, you know, there's a nuclear war, it didn't matter if we recorded this podcast or not, you know?
Right.
I would say that, you know, sometimes literature can be depressive.
Yeah.
And so you got to kind of balance that a little bit.
Yeah. I think if you want to bring it back to like what the idea of overreading.
Yeah.
It certainly is, depending on the type of books you like to read, like it certainly is an easy escape.
I mean, overreading for sure, if you're not thinking about what you're reading, you're just consuming.
And it can also be a way to like, you can, if you aren't careful, like, and all you do is read all the time, you can very quickly become isolated.
Yeah, definitely.
If you're not, you know, social to some degree.
Definitely.
So,
okay.
That is it for my questions. You're up.
Kyla asks, why do you weirdos drink Monster instead of coffee like civilized human beings?
Well, actually, Kyla, I drink both because I have a severe caffeine addiction.
Coffee's disgusting. Let it be known.
Coffee's delicious, you heathen.
Vigo Gallup asks, why do we think Moby Dick is so popular right now? Any thoughts on that?
So I think what he means is it seems like everybody on Bookstagram is reading it.
Yeah.
I think part of it is the unfortunate lack of attention span in the world today. You know, I posted a thing on Instagram a while back before I even went to the hospital, which is kind of a stack of books that I was like, I'm thinking about reading these soon. And someone that presumably knew I hadn't read Moby Dick yet sent me a message and was like, hey, we're doing a stack of books, looks great, but we're doing a group read of Moby Dick soon. You should join us. And I was just like, yeah, absolutely. And
I mean, that's just kind of
we've had plenty of good discussion.
Yeah.
As well as plenty of good phallic humor. But you know, you get someone in the group that makes a post, whether it's a story or an actual post on their feed about their experience reading Moby Dick, whether they're done or it's like a halfway update or whatever. And then there's 10 people in the group. They tag all of us. We all share it.
Yeah.
However many thousand more people see it now.
I mean, social media it's functioning the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
It's social.
Yeah. I don't think it's a bad thing that more people are reading arguably the great American novel. It's just one of those things that social media is kind of doing its thing.
Yeah. Jack's Paperbacks asks, what are your summer reading plans? Do you have anything in particular planned for the summer? I do not. Big book summer, basically.
Yeah,
for me.
big book summer. I'm going to start The Combinations by Louis Armand, either sometime this week or definitely next week.
Yep.
Doing that as a buddy read with Buddy.
Sweet.
And Kevin, the HV book nerd. Depending on how long that takes me to read, I might attempt The Logos by Mark De Silva.
Mm-hmm.
And I say attempt not based on difficulty or concern about difficulty, but because the only other definite plan I have aside from The Combinations is Schadenfreude, which is to be published sometime in August.
Yep.
So if I finish, if it takes me until like late July or whatever, early August to finish The Combinations, I'm not going to start a 1,000-page novel between then and waiting for a different 1,000-page novel to show up at my door.
Yeah.
So yeah, who knows? But I would say The Combinations and Schadenfreude are the two that are like 100% definite.
Cool.
I'd like to read Matthias Inard's new book, The Deserters, which is only like 200 pages. So
Sweet.
I'll sneak that in somewhere.
Could
There's plenty of others. I have a bunch of Melville's books that I just ordered. There's a book, I forget who wrote it off the top of my head, but it's called Ahab Sequels.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically kind of a fictional account of what happened to Ahab.
Oh, sweet.
After the events of Moby Dick and before.
Oh, cool.
And I also have Melville by Rodrigo Fresson, which is kind of a fictional biography of Herman Melville, kind of about how like the tall tales that Melville's father, Alan, told Herman while he was on his deathbed.
Oh, wow.
How that could have contributed to Herman Melville's writing career.
Cool. Vigo also wants to know, did you DNF the Count of Monte Cristo?
Yeah, pretty much.
Effectively. Jesus Christ, I need glasses. Andy DBQ asks, please give me a couple recommendations for the upcoming NYRB sale. He already has Hard Rain Falling.
Okay, Hard Rain Falling, Butcher's Crossing, Warlock. If it's still in print, McCroll. In the Heart of the Country by William Gaddis. JR, The Recognitions. I haven't read much of it, but get some of Vladimir Sorokin's work.
I really liked, I'm always talking about this book, The Long Ships by Francis G. Bankston. I liked In a Lonely Place by Dorothy Hughes.
I wasn't crazy about it, but Fat City was still a good novel. It was good, not great to me. So, also, while we're on the subject of R&B, NYRB, now that you finally have your own copies, can I have my William Gaddis books back?
Yeah. Literary pet peeves. That comes from Megan Bozeman.
Really shitty blurbs that don't say anything meaningful about the book.
That's definitely annoying.
If there is a blurb that calls your book an ambitious tour de force, I will not buy it. I will not read it. I will throw it at a small child.
I really don't like super duper long chapters.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, I can deal with it if the book is really good, but I prefer shorter chapters, which is something I actually forgot about Moby Dick.
Very short.
Is how short the chapters are for the most part.
Yeah, I can deal with long chapters or no chapters even.
Mm-hmm.
If A, the book is good, or I'm at least enjoying the book, and B, there are clear stopping points.
Somewhat natural. Yeah.
Natural. I shouldn't say clear, but natural stopping points.
Beware of Pity by Zweig was like that. There's no chapters in that book.
Yeah.
But there's like clear breaks.
Yeah. Even if there's not like a, actual like space between paragraphs.
Yeah.
Even if like the start of a new paragraph is kind of a new scene, so to speak. It's a kind of a natural.
Yeah.
I would also say I've said before that I don't need a synopsis or like a super detailed synopsis to sell me on a book, but like some semblance of if it's just blurbs,
Yeah.
and nothing about what the actual book is about, that's annoying.
Yeah.
I might still buy the book as long as none of the blurbs call it an ambitious tour de force, but like it's annoying.
I would say another pet peeve is we've talked about this before, is like the use of like social media in books by name.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they sent me a message on Facebook.
Yeah.
I find it to be very clunky, and it's not impossible to do well, but it's difficult to make it not seem kind of cheesy.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know
guess
why,
other
but-
things on that note, any sort of cussing or foul language,
Yeah. Hard to do right.
especially in the title,
Yeah.
fuck off.
Yeah.
You are not cool and edgy.
Yeah.
You're a loser.
Yeah.
And the same thing with drug and alcohol references. Like if they're done well and are like naturally fit in the story,
Yeah.
by all means, be a degenerate junkie. If it's like to try and make the author and or a character seem cool and edgy, and it's just very ham-fisted, like that's super noticeable and really takes away from a book.
Anthropocenic asks, is literary fiction stagnating? Which authors are on the cutting edge of style/structure? I mean, I would say, is it stagnating? Probably, possibly. I don't know. I don't read like a ton of super new stuff.
Yeah.
And the stuff that I have read that is like newer, there's lots of like good stuff, but I wouldn't say it's like, ooh, this is like cutting edge, really changing the game here.
Yeah. I also feel like the term literary fiction means less and less as time with the passage of time. I feel like it used to be, when however long ago the term like first started circulating and becoming part of the vernacular, like it meant books that were attempting to be more than just genre fiction.
Yeah.
Right. They were attempting to have some gravity behind them. And now I feel like it's just gets slapped around on anything that the publisher or bookseller can't neatly label as any particular genre.
Yeah.
So I don't mean to bemoan or disparage anything that is labeled as literary fiction. I just sort of feel like it's kind of falling under the same umbrella that postmodernism falls under, where the more people use the term, the less and less it's being used accurately or with any sort of definition.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that'd be my answer.
So chat says, have you read House of Leaves? If not, you should.
I absolutely should not have read that book, and nobody else listening to this show should read that book.
I don't know where it is and who asked it, but I did see another question come in here that asked why you don't like it, but you just didn't think it was good.
I didn't think it was a good book. I thought, so there's two kind of narrative threads going on in that book.
Yep.
There's the family that moves into the house and their experience moving in this haunted house, so to speak. And then there's the Johnny Truant guy that finds a book about them.
Yep.
And as he's reading that book, starts to kind of go bonkers and fall down this abyss of just what the fuck is life. And I thought those sections with Johnny Truant were basically everything I just rallied against in my answering the pet peeves question of, oh, this guy's got a terrible life and he does drugs and alcohol and he doesn't take care of himself. And oh, he's so cool and edgy and he's battling all these inner demons and it's written poorly. And we're going to focus more on this instead of the more interesting part of the story, which is the people that live in the house.
Yeah.
Like if House of Leaves was more about the people that actually lived in the house and less about Johnny Truant, I would hate it less.
Fair enough.
I might still hate it because the structure was more interesting than any of the actual writing in it, but maybe less if there was less Johnny Truant.
Well, there you go, folks.
I will say one more thing about House of Leaves, and this is almost positive about it. The epigraph of that novel is, "This is not for you." It's not. Anybody that opens House of Leaves, if you actually read the epigraph and read "This is not for you," take that seriously. The book is probably not for you. Don't read it. Read something else.
AZDY asks, what are your thoughts about Murakami? I have very few. I haven't read any, and I don't have a strong desire to.
I think he's a creepy old man.
There you go. Yusef Jahari 11, I can't read. Have you read any Arabic writing before? Nothing comes to the top off the top of my head.
Yeah,
I'd have to think about it.
Nothing comes from to mind. I have, oh God, I cannot remember the author's name. The title of the book is Minor Detail or Minor Details. It's by a Palestinian woman. And I have a couple of books.
Keep going. I'm just going to check on the battery on this camera.
I have a couple of books from that Archipelago Books published by Elias Khoury. I think is the author's name. He is Palestinian as well.
Mike from the book club asks, who are the most kissable members of the book club and why is it me and Buddy? Because you're both just so dreamy. That's why.
Yeah, ditto.
Anglim Pop Prop asks noir novels. I'm not the right person to ask about that.
Yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, In a Lonely Place is a noir.
Yeah.
Which is great, but I don't have much to compare it to.
Yeah.
I guess technically, Inherent Vice.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah.
Is noir. I mean, Against the Day has some elements of it. Bleeding Edge is also kind of a noirish novel.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Adham17 asks, read Mason and Dixon? You have.
I loved it.
I literally just got a copy the other day. So
yeah, I was actually just talking about this the other day with someone on Instagram. I think it is pretty steadily holds the number 2 spot as
Nice.
my second favorite Pynchon.
Cool.
After Gravity's Rainbow.
Nice.
It's and then Against the Day and Lot 49 are constantly fighting it out for number 3.
Nice. Once Shadow Ticket comes out, we'll have to redo all our Pynchon novels ranked.
Well, you're gonna have to catch up because you're what 1 for 8 right now.
Yeah, I'm pathetic
Yeah.
when it comes to Pynchon.
Yeah.
CJ Talks Book says, so happy Andy is back home. I know Alfie had some criticism of Lonesome Dove, but what did you think of it, Andy? Well, we have a whole episode.
We have a whole episode about it. You and I shared. That's what made that episode great, and actually allowed us to have a full episode. Is you and I had pretty much the same criticisms. Thought it was a good book, good narrative, good story. It was well written. I just think McMurtry fell short of his goal of setting out to take the myth of the American cowboy down a peg or two.
Yeah.
I think, if anything, he almost did the exact opposite and kind of, I wouldn't say glorify. Well, he might, to some readers, he might have glorified them. At the very least, it was like a lateral move for the American cowboy.
Yeah.
Because he showed some negative characteristics of them. He showed some positive characteristics of them.
Yeah. He also used some pretty bad tropes about indigenous people,
Yeah,
and black people.
yeah. Again,
whatever.
I think it was a good book. Just fell short of what he stated his goal was.
Yeah. Also, too, like I enjoyed all of my reading of it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a fun book to read. I'm glad I read it. I would recommend it. But like you and I kind of thought at the time, like probably not a book we're gonna like think about a whole lot.
Right.
I almost never do.
Yeah.
Sorry, I always get some weird messages. Hennessy says, have your book interest changed recently? No.
Not really. If anything, like I just am interested in more things now, which is terrible for my sanity, attention span, and bank account.
Yeah. Mr. Todd SLP asks or says, reading Don Quixote, have either of you thoughts on where classics fit into your reading? I've not read it. It's one of the kind of big classics that I haven't gotten to.
Yeah.
I don't have like a super strong desire to read it, but I'm not like averse to reading it.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I haven't read it. I would like to. I'm not in a rush. As far as classics speak in general, I'm not super interested in.
I'm a big 20th century guy. It's just my sweet spot.
Yeah. Same. 20th century, especially post World War II.
Yeah.
I would say more so than you, I have become a little bit more interested in modern stuff.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean things that were published like this year or even last year, but things that have been published in the 21st century.
Yeah.
So,
let's see here. Confused at which way I'm going here. The ghostly Fop, not Fap, which I thought his username was when I first saw it. What are your contenders for the so-called Great American Novel?
ooh, Duncan. Good question.
I think, Moby Dick
Yep.
is justified.
Yep.
I would probably consider putting Infinite Jest on that list. I guess it kind of depends on what your definition of the Great American Novel is.
Yeah.
I mean, Moby Dick probably deserves its spot just because it was like, but prior to Moby Dick, we didn't really have something that was widely thought of as on the same caliber as like a lot of the literary greats from other countries, and or like Shakespearean level or whatever.
Yeah.
And so obviously it was a hugely influential book in that way.
Yeah.
But I think Infinite Jest really deserves to be on there because we've talked about this before. Like there kind of is that line in the sand of like writing before and writing after Infinite Jest. And so if you're the person that was able to draw that line in the sand, like that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
But I think Infinite Jest so accurately depicts some of the flaws of American life.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
in society.
I mean, Moby Dick, Gravity's Rainbow, Infinite Jest.
I probably would not put Gravity's Rainbow on that list.
Really?
Yeah, because
Wow.
I think there's something about, like, I think Gravity's Rainbow is like too inaccessible to give it that kind of label, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
Because if it's like if it's something that like a lot of people just cannot get to, then like, can you really like attribute it as like the great novel of this country? I'm not saying it's a bad book,
right?
Or that it's not amazing.
So
but
when I was driving back to New Hampshire yesterday, there is a podcast called the Great American Novel Podcast.
Okay.
And they do episodes like solely dedicated to discussing. I listened to the Moby Dick episode. They have a Gravity's Rainbow episode. The only other book that I remember off the top of my head that they talk about is Invisible Man. Seems like they have a lot of great episodes discussing a lot of great books. I bring them up because in the Moby Dick episode that I listened to, they had what I thought was a really solid definition of at least the idea of what a great American novel is. And I unfortunately can't remember it. So
do you remember like the essence of it?
It was something about how basically like how it basically it has the duality of like you can read it as there's a good narrative here, something that's going to hook your average reader.
Gravity's Rainbow's certainly out then.
And it has complexity and depth to it.
Yeah.
So that discusses societal and moral problems that close readers can discuss ad nauseum. So that was the rough idea of their definition that I really liked.
Yeah.
And then before we move on, I'm gonna throw out two things from ideas that I'm stealing from Rick Harsh.
Okay.
One of which, so Duncan, the Ghostly Fop, was one of the guys in the group read of Moby Dick that I was in, and we had this sort of discussion about the great American novel. The first thing I'm stealing from Rick, I'm pretty sure Moby Dick is the book that he has quoted, but Moby Dick is the second great American novel. The first great has not been written yet.
Oh, interesting.
And then also, and I agree with that in the sense that I don't think there is one true great American novel.
Right. Speaks to the impossibility.
Right. But also, if you go back into the depths of Rick's YouTube channel, you have to go back like years at this point. He has a video. It's a, top 25 great American novels or top, whatever. And he is kind of, trolling tongue in cheek. It's very Rick Harshian. Takes the idea, if you ask anybody the great American novel, like they're going to give you the 5 or so that I just listed, all books that have been written by authors from the United States of America.
Yeah.
And so Rick takes the idea of that it entirely ignores the continent of South America.
Yeah.
And his list of the top 20 great American novels is entirely from Central and South America.
Well, I mean, to be fair, like when I first got into weightlifting and I was training with a lot of Central and South Americans. So my first coach was Bolivian. My next coach was Dominican. We trained with a guy from Cuba quite a bit. There were some Guatemalans. There were some Colombians. I mean, they actually took offense to us referring to our country and each other as like Americans.
Yeah.
They're like, this is all America, South America, Central America, North America. And it's like, yes, but like, no.
Right. Right.
So like colloquially, we certainly, everyone knows what we mean when we say American.
Right.
But yeah, I guess he's not wrong in that way, technically speaking.
Right.
It's a bit pedantic, but I mean, it's funny also.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Invisible Man, I can see the case for, if you want to talk about like a book that really embodies the American ethos, like Invisible Man certainly should be on the list.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about like purely the greatest work written by an American, a United States citizen.
Yeah.
I don't know if Invisible Man would be on that list for me. Not that it's poorly written. I think it's a well-written book, but it wasn't like the writing in this book's going to blow your mind.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people make the case for The Great Gatsby, which I would kind of put in that former camp of like, really it does embody like America, but like the writing to me, I don't know. I read it in high school and I was like, whatever.
I mean, I think that's I wouldn't say good, not great. I mean, that's a pretty good, almost great novel, but it's a great American novel.
I mean, it's about a scorned dude who becomes a scam artist to get his woman back.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like he's like a con artist, and he's doing all this illegal stuff to make money. It's like a pure capitalist.
But that's such a going back to what I was saying about people that read to be performative and romanticize being literate. Like,
sure, yeah.
Grow up and pick a real book.
Brutal.
And get some personality beyond the book that you were assigned in high school.
Right.
That being said, you should read The Great Gatsby. It's a good book.
Yeah. Strangely Read asks, is there a book that you couldn't shake? I mean, quite a few. Matterhorn, which I recently finished. Like, I read it with Rachel in our book club, and I was like, this book's probably going to give me PTSD.
Yeah.
There's some scenes that I'm like, good God, this is brutal.
Yeah.
There's a long list of books that I think about all the time.
Yeah.
So,
unfortunately, I'm going to do it again. Gravity's Rainbow. Like, I'm sorry. I have not shaken that book. I've talked about it before in some way or another. Pretty much everything I've read since then, like, sort of ties back to it.
sure.
So I think, as annoying as it is that I keep giving that as an answer, like, it's the only applicable book.
Yeah. Flippin' Pages asks, last time you finished a book and realized it was the perfect book at that moment in your life? I would probably say Catch-22 by Joseph Heller.
I would say
Gravity's Rainbow.
no. I said it at the beginning of the pod, The Summer Layoff by Matt Booker. It quite literally, I mean, the protagonist of the book is in a period of forced stasis where he's really not doing anything, but putzing around his neighborhood and ruminating on life. I certainly was not as physically active as the protagonist and did not keep a diary, but I read it while I was stuck at home, my parents' house, recovering from brain surgery and out of work, and kind of thinking about life. So it just lined up perfectly.
Yeah. So many questions here.
Yeah.
Writer you haven't read yet. All of them.
So many of them.
So many of
them.
That's from Don Levy.
I don't have time to answer all of that. So many of them.
This is a good question. If you could read any translated book in its original language, which one would it be? I don't know if I have a specific book in mind. However, I think it would be Spanish. In fact, both reading 100 Years of Solitude and then watching the television adaptation made me want to learn Spanish.
Yeah,
which I'm not going to do. But
I think most of mine would probably be Latin American. I mean, some of Bolaño's work.
Yeah.
Different language, but Lispector's work.
Yeah.
It would be cool to read Krasznahorkai's work in the original Hungarian. But I am certainly not going to go out of my way to learn Hungarian. It's much more likely that I take the time to learn Spanish so I could read Bolaño's work. But that's probably not going to happen either.
Phil, a.k.a. Reading Fast and Slow, asks, what historical event or person, not an author, do you wish there was a nonfiction book about?
Ooh.
Well, here's the thing, is there's pretty much a nonfiction book for everything you can think of.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Phil, you're really throwing me for a loop there with the nonfiction part of that, because I would agree with you. There's pretty much a nonfiction book about everything. For like 95% of you reading that question, I had my answer locked and loaded, which is that I wish Thomas Pynchon would write a mega novel about the Civil War.
But that he wants to know nonfiction.
I know, Tony. I'm telling you what my answer was going to be until Phil ruined it with the nonfiction part.
Gotcha.
I don't know. There are certainly plenty of books out there currently about how evil the CIA is.
Sure, yeah.
But why not print some more? Let's get some more out there.
Yeah. I would be there might even be a book about this, but there was a motorcycle racer named Nikki Hayden, maybe a year older than me. We're about the same age, and when AMA Superbike, which is like the US's national championship, they used to come up here to Loudon. And so we would go, And it was cool to see like this 16-year-old kid. He's like my age,
Yeah.
like racing professionally. It was like very inspiring. And then he went on to compete in MotoGP, which is the like it's like that Formula One of motorcycle racing. And he won the championship in 2006, and to date is the last American to do so. And what was very significant about that is it's pretty uncommon for guys to go from like super bikes, which is what we race here in the States, to MotoGP, because it's kind of like somebody going from like NASCAR to like Formula One. Like you just wouldn't do that. Right. Like normally like Formula One people, they like go up through like kart racing and then they have like junior categories in Formula One. MotoGP is the same way. So it was like pretty unusual for someone to take that career path. And not only that, but he beat Valentino Rossi, who was like considered the greatest of all time in Rossi's prime. So it's like a big deal that he won the championship. And then his career didn't go like super great after that. And then he died in 2018 in a bicycle accident. Oof. Yeah. He was like on his bicycle training and
like a pedal bike.
A pedal bike. Oh. Yeah. And he was like just staying in shape.
Yeah.
And somebody like blew a stop sign and like,
oh my God,
ran him over and killed him.
Oh my God.
And so he was like in his mid 30s, cut his career short. There might be a book about his life, but I would certainly read one.
I have an actual answer.
Okay.
I've said this on the pod before, but since in case we have like new listeners or whatever, not necessarily a nonfiction book, but I would love nothing more than to read 100-page essay from David Foster Wallace on the cultural spectacle that was the Taylor Swift Eras Tour.
Yeah. R.I.P.
So that's my answer, Phil.
All right. It was these usernames. Siothin Theory, I don't know, was the person who asked why you didn't like House of Leaves. And they also asked, is there something better and equally experimental?
Ooh. Yeah, there's something better. Like almost every book that's ever been published.
But equally experimental.
Oh.
I mean, I'm not a very like ergodic fiction person, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Hopscotch.
Hopscotch, experimental in different ways. If we're talking about structurally and intertextually and all that, Mystery Doc by Matthew McIntosh.
Have you heard of Guy Gavriel Kay? He's a literary quasi-fantasy author and a genius.
No,
I don't read fantasy. How long from your start to be a bookstagrammer and get many views and followers? My first year, I had the goal of 10,000 followers by the end of the year, and I fell short of that by probably 800 or 900. And then by the end of the second year, I had 100,000. So it's exponential.
And I pretty much just mooch off of you.
That's totally
my growth strategy is to comment on your reels and try to be witty and get followers from that.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton.
It's if I had a particular number of followers in mind, I would call it a failure. With my general goal of just getting more followers, it's been a great success.
Oh, love that.
So,
followers don't really matter though, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Jesus only had 12.
Wow. What a loser. Let's see here. Have you reread any books as an adult that were assigned as a child in school? Ooh. Moby Dick.
The only books that I've reread that were assignments in high school that I can think of, East of Eden, Crime and Punishment, and The Great Gatsby. And I liked all of them better as an adult outside of school than I did in school. I didn't dislike any of them, as an angsty teenager. I remember liking East of Eden a lot when I was in high school. And I was probably pretty neutral about Crime and Punishment and Great Gatsby.
Few more here.
2 hours.
I know.
Yeah.
It's been a while,
Yeah.
This is a great question. D. Dancy asks, are you happy with your life?
Man, what the fuck?
Apparently Andy's not. Yes, I am. My life is sick.
Yeah, I mean, not to be overly cliche about it, but coming out of a medical crisis, I'm pretty happy being alive.
Yeah.
And have a lot of things going for me. I mean, it sucks that I've had to take time off from my regular physical activities.
Yeah.
But I'm grateful that I'm not going to have to permanently stop them.
Yeah.
I'm going to be able to go back to them.
Yeah.
And there's nothing indicating I won't be able to return to my normal levels of physical activity. I can still read and comprehend just fine,
Nice.
Despite having brain surgery.
Yep.
I have a ton of people in my life, both that I know personally, that have been very supportive over the last, month, 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm blown away by the amount of people from our audience, people that I know from lifting, jiu-jitsu, work, whatever.
Yeah.
That donated to the GoFundMe.
Yeah. Yeah, we got a real good
so I
response from
mean, I'm gonna be sardonic and a wise ass and act like that's a really heavy and difficult question to answer. But I mean, yeah, I'm happy with my life.
Cool. Yeah, my life is sick. I do what I want when I want. I don't work that hard. I read a lot of books, hang out with my dogs, ride my motorcycle. I have no. There's this.
My life is dope, and I do dope shit.
Yeah, there was this comedian. His name is Caleb. I forget his last name. Mike's a big fan of him, but he was doing TikToks for a while, and somebody he's pretty overweight guy, and he was he made a response to some comment about oh, you're fat or something like that. He's like, dude, my life, I'm so fat. He's like, but my life is so much better than yours. I could get even fatter and my life would still be so much better than your life. And that's how I think all the time when people make weird comments about me. Yeah. They're like, oh, shut up, Tubby. I hate your opinion on this book. It's how sad is your life that you're mad about my opinion on a book. So you're making fun of my physique.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I weep for you. No, I don't. But
it's like the quote from Mad Men that Don Draper, I don't even think about you.
Yeah. But actually, I just will 100% just try to rage bait people into more comments because it's just good for the content. But
yeah.
Victor Irving asks how to monetize my reading. Well, I have a whole course on that thing. So click the link down below for the Patreon and select the Books to Growth tier. You will find out.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. Don't monetize your reading. It's okay to have a hobby and just enjoy things for the sake of enjoying them.
Correct.
Please rally against capitalism. Not everything has to be a money-making scheme.
But join my book club.
But join the book club because it's full of great people that talk about good books and have good discussion. And while you're there, you can follow Tony's course on how to monetize your social media, but it's also don't just enjoy things for the sake of enjoying them. We made all this shit up.
That's true.
None of this is real. We're supposed to be frolicking in a field, picking berries and hunting animals and shit. And now we have credit scores and medical debt.
I think the brain tumor surgery made Andy go woke, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, let's.
No, I've had these opinions. I just don't give a now.
Let's get back to these questions here.
Yeah.
Favorite deep vellum book.
You don't want to end on that?
No. Favorite deep vellum book. Mine is probably The Anarchist Who Shared My Name by
Yeah.
Jose Martin Sanchez.
Unfortunately, I've only read Solenoid from Deep Elm. I've got a ton of their books, but I think that's the only one.
That can't be the only one you've read, really?
I'd have to, without like looking at my shelf in front of me, that's the only one I can think of off the top of my head that I've definitely read. Yeah. But honestly, I've read so few from them that I don't think there are any others that I've enjoyed more than Solenoid. So,
yeah. The Death Poets asks, for 16-year-olds, what's the best 3 books that when you read, you feel like you are in the book? Well, going back to the question of, am I happy with my life? Part of the reason why the answer is yes is because I don't have children. And it's been a long while now since I've been 16, so hard for me to say. I will tell you this. I wish that I had taken all of my reading more seriously when I was 16.
yeah.
Like if I had like read Moby Dick, for example, in high school with the same intention
Yes.
as I'm reading it now, I would be a much more cool human being.
Yes. I'm going to kind of mirror that answer because it's been not as long as you, but still a long time since I've been 16.
Yeah.
I would say at least attempt to give a shit about the books that you're assigned in high school.
Your English teachers are probably not dummies. They're assigning them for a reason.
Right. And you might not like them. That might be because it's a book that just doesn't vibe with you.
Yeah.
It might be because your frontal lobe hasn't developed fully yet and you just don't get the book. That's fine. It might be because you're an angsty teenager and in an act of rebellion, you're going to choose to just not like this thing because someone else is telling you to do it.
Yep.
Which is a totally normal part of being 16.
Yeah.
At least attempt to like the book. And if you vibe with it or vibe with parts of it, look up other things that are like it. And, try to read outside of whatever you're being assigned in school, no matter how much your friends tell you it's not cool, because they're wrong. And if you read books, you can be cool like us.
Yeah. We're pretty much the 2 coolest people around.
I don't know anyone cooler than me. So,
all right, this will be the last question.
oh boy. Hope it's a good one.
This is from Hey There, Diona. What's a bookish thing you feel like not enough people are talking about?
I mean, I don't want to repeat my whole rant about how we don't have to make everything a monetization scheme and whatever, but and to be totally antithetical to this podcast and what you've been doing with your
With my life.
with your life and Instagram page. Not everything needs to be a scheme to create content. If you
For sure, yeah.
If you enjoy doing it and it brings you fulfillment and satisfaction and happiness, by all means. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell anyone to not do the content creation thing. But if it's something you have like joined the online book space because you like to read and you wanted to get like recommendations and connect with other people because you don't have a ton of people in your personal life that are readers, and you follow someone like Tony who puts out, or any Tony who puts out well-made book content on a consistent basis, don't see that, or don't take that as you being any less of a reader, or you're not doing enough with your reading journey because you're not creating and putting out consistent content. Like, it's totally okay and good and valid if you're just reading and maybe throwing up a post about it every now and then, or weekly or whatever. It's totally okay if you are reading and don't post it all, but you have people on Instagram or TikTok or whatever that you follow and engage with on a consistent basis, and to just have conversations with those people about what you've been reading and enjoying, and likewise what they've been reading and enjoying. You don't have to be a content creator to get to connect and get experience your books and reading on a deeper level. Again, if you like doing those things, you find fulfillment and satisfaction at them. And even if you quote unquote suck at doing it, whether it's the actual production value of your content or the engagement you're getting is not what you would like it to be, that's fine too. Like, just, it's okay to just like things, man, and to just get some happiness out of it without having it be this gamified monetization scheme that our capitalist hellscape has turned everything into. So I'm going to step off my soapbox now and hand it over to you. So top that, Tony.
Join us next week when we'll decide who's the bigger book snob, myself or Andy. Thanks for watching.